Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's finally time to start working on bikes in the new shed. And what better bike to start on than the Honda VFR? So I mentioned about this bike in one of the previous videos, but what's the story with it? How did it get here? Well, I kinda wanted a VFR, a 5th gen VFR. I won't get into details why a 5th gen right now. But my best friend has an identical one. I've ridden it for quite a few hours and I thought this is really good. So it would be even better if both of us could go ride our red VFRs. That's part of it. And the other reason is a very good friend who sadly passed away a few years had quite a few bikes, but his favorite one was a red 750 VFR, which I did ride, and it's a bit too small for me, but a lovely bike. So this bike kind of reminds me of him, even if it's the newer version of it. So yeah, I happened to find it online. It was really cheap. I picked this bike up for £400 and it's here in the shed. Now I need to figure out how to fix it and get it back on the road. But what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Well, not a lot, it seems. I brought it in the shed. I bought it with no keys. I switched it on, put a charger on the battery, and it fires straight up. I guess it's true what they say, a Honda's a Honda. The engine seems to run pretty sweet, everything else works. There are a few things I need to do on it to get it through an MOT, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So it's got leaky fork seals. I'm going to swap those out. It needs new mirrors because one of them is broken, and it needs obviously an ignition set. I did try to cut a new key, I failed. I'll get back into that a bit later. So I'm going to start with the forks, and I'm just going to go quickly through everything I need to take off to get them out of the bike. So here I am taking the front mudguard off and the last piece of it. Sadly it is a bit broken, and while I'm here I might as well quickly check the headstock bearings, and everything seems okay, so I'm not going to do anything about them at this point. And time to loosen the pinch bolts. And now that I've loosened them by hand and everything seems okay, I'm going to use an impact to drive them out just to speed things up. And now loosen and remove the spindle bolt. I should have done this before I took the pinch bolts off, but it came loose anyway, so it's fine. Now I'm removing the bolts to secure the brake lines in place, and removing the calipers. Spindle comes out, and I'm taking the front wheel away. I'll loosen the lower pinch bolts as well while the lift is at this height. And now with the lift lower so I can reach the top, I'm just going to remove the clips. Loosen and remove the handlebars. And now while the forks are still clamped, I'm just going to use a glove to prevent any marks on the soft aluminium and loosen the top caps. So it's time for me to get out of the shed and go to my actual job. But before I go, I just want to remove the bottom drain plugs or the damper rod bolts and let the oil drain in the pan overnight, so that way I won't make a big mess later. So as soon as I loosened the bolts, they started spinning with the damper rods and not coming out, so I had to use an impact driver to remove them. And now just loosen the top clamp and pull the fork lug out. And they're out. Time to start this assembly. I'm going to start with one of the fork legs, and I'm just going to push off this protective shield. Gently pry out the dust seal. Fish the retaining clip out. And now I'm just going to hammer the fork leg apart. I'm going to put the bottom side in a container to drain the rest of the oil out. And there's the old seal. It doesn't look too bad, to be honest. I can't see any damage, but hopefully a new one will solve the issue. And now I'm just taking the bushings off. And now I'm going to remove the top cap and pull the damper and spring assembly out. It's got some debris on the surface, almost looks like rust, so it could do with a good clean. Apologize for the camera, keeps moving around. I should invest in some proper gear. But here I am loosening up the top cap and taking the rest of it apart. And now it's time to take the other one apart. I'm gonna do it in a slightly different order, some might argue the correct order. So I'm loosening off the top cap first. Now loosening off the lock nut and removing it from the damper rod. Washers, spacer and spring can come out. Pulling the plastic thingy off. And now prying out the dust seal. You may have noticed this looks slightly different from the other fork. Now fishing out the retaining clip. Fish out the damper assembly. Hammer the forks apart. Split and remove the bushings. And the old seal comes off. Now having a closer look at these bushings, they look the same on both legs, and they're actually in very good condition. They've got some marks on the inside of it, which is probably just from fabrication, but the sliding side of it is in really good condition. The upper ones seem to have some scratches, but they don't seem worn at all. And the seal on this side is not looking too bad either. So I've got everything clean, all looks pretty good. The fork legs, you know, they've had seen better days, but the plan is to give them a coat of paint. I've got the stanchions, and they're in reasonable conditions. You may have noticed there, that wasn't my sandwich. I've tried to clean the pinning a bit. Unfortunately, I didn't see it initially, because this was behind the fork leg, as it was. But it does have a little bit of pitting. So I tried to clean that up as best I can, but hopefully it won't cause any leaks in the future. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, these are all the Honda parts. I thought they've given me everything. It turns out I only have the top bearings, not the bottom ones that sit in there. But that's fine, because the old ones look to me like they're pretty good. These are the ones that I'm replacing. Am I pointing the camera in the right place? These are the ones that I'm replacing. And there's no real wear noticeable. These ones have some lines in them, but they're pretty good, to be fair. And the bottom ones, again, they look pretty good to me. So we should be alright. So the plan is to put it all back together, fill them obviously to the right level. Don't push the dust seals in. I'll leave the dust seals just on the stanchion, and then I'll tape everything, give this another clean, and try and paint them hopefully today. And then when it's back on the bike, I'll push the dust seals in. Another thing worth mentioning obviously is there are things you can check, especially on the stanchions. If they're not bent, you can put them between V-blocks, have a dial indicator in the middle, turn them around and see if they're, well, essentially if they're bent. These should be alright. I haven't really checked that, but I'm sure they're fine. The other thing you should check, maybe, especially on a bike that has a few miles, is whether the springs are still usable. And the manual has a length for it, which I think is 382.7 millimeters. It's about there, 382 millimeters. But there's a service limit. Obviously, with time, they could get squished. They're not going to spring back as they were originally. So there's a 375 millimeter service limit. So that's worth checking. And these ones are about 381 millimeters. So I think this video is getting long enough, and it's probably best to cut it here. So this is the end of part 1. In part 2 we'll continue putting the forks together and putting them back on the bike. Thanks for watching, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.